Hello, world. Pants off, Australia. The whips are cracking. The surf's up. The doctor is in. It's just another afternoon when too much sport is barely enough. And now here's the team who can open the batting and take the new ball up the hill into the wind, who can turn defence into attack in the twinkling of an eye, who've enjoyed the highs and learnt from the lows, who are all the better for recent racing and in the wash-up at the end of the day win a lot more than they lose. It's the team of H.G. Nelson and rampaging Roy Slaven and the dominant backline of this sporting life. H.C.
This bloke's like the tourist industry. I mean, Tommy Keneally. No one. Tommy's won the Booker Prize. Tommy's won the Booker Prize. I could stand corrected here, but I think he might have won it a couple of times. Tommy Keneally. And no one knows football like Tommy Keneally as well. Every year he's always rabbiting on about Celtic Kings. Patrick White. He's sure he's not. Nobel Prize for literature. Who wanted to dedicate a novel? Unfortunately, didn't get around to writing, of course. Wanted to dedicate a novel to Frank Arrock. Frank Arrock. As far as Patrick was concerned, as nearly as I can tell, he felt that no one had put into Australian soccer like Frank Arrock had done over the years and wanted to reward him.
What would the opening line be? Something along the line, the striker hit the ball and I felt it go thud into the back of the net and the crowd was over the moon.
Well, he'd be more inclined to...
Have a short sentence than that.
I don't know. He'd say something like, I don't know, the creases in the trouser around the gusset
led me to thinking.
Frank Arrock.
Got me thinking.
It oozed success or something like that. You know, the creases told a story that the mouth wouldn't. You know what I mean? He's into... He didn't mind exploring the crevices
of life,
especially below the plimsoll line.
Yes. Lomez, I don't know, Roy. You've got me absolutely on the bit.
Yeah, sorry, I know it was a very short article. I know, as it was reported in the press. It didn't state his background or anything.
Or what credentials the bloke had. Yeah. I would say, could I dare to comment that he's not very well credentialed at all to be making these assertions?
Well, I think the bloke is an idiot. I don't know him, but I think he's an idiot. And if I was to meet him, the first thing I'd say, if he came up to me and said, excuse me, Roy, how are you? We haven't met. My name's Dr. Stephen Alvarez. I would say, what did you know? Alomez.
Yes.
I would say, Alomez, you're an idiot. I've heard about you. I've
read too much.
I've heard far too much already. You're a goose. You're an idiot. And I'd probably leave it at that. Or, if he wanted to prosecute the argument any further, I'd probably lay a bit of nut on him.
And call him a joke as he went down.
And call him a joke as he went down bleeding.
The croc farm has allowed Jethro to come along.
How old is Jethro now? Some say 105.
I think 105.
Some say it was a gift of William Dampier. That is going back, isn't it?
It is, indeed. And I'd love to think that he was a gift to William Dampier, or certainly Dirk Hartog.
Well, Dirk who buried the tin plate.
Yeah, the tin plate.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's tremendous. I think, the original...
If that croc could talk.
Oh.
What stories he'd tell of Dirk.
And, of course, the Croc's a well-known performance artist, and he's going to be doing a few tricks that I don't think crocodiles normally do. Next Saturday.
He's dedicated his life to telling the story of Dirk Hartog. It's a very long yarn.
It is. He was only with Dirk for about a month, and he's taken 105...
But Dirk was that sort of bloke.
Oh, true.
He opened up.
To a croc.
Yeah.
We, speaking of Vic Hislop, which we were briefly and have been over the last few weeks, I got a terrific letter from Jeff Sandon during the week. I think Jeff hails from Newry Bar. I hope that's right, Jeff. He said he thought he might like this article on Vic Hislop, which appeared in the Courier Mail of last weekend.
Oh, yes.
He was a bit disappointed that Vic failed to make an appearance to our show in Brisbane a few weeks ago. Obviously, we did get onto Vic, but he was away shark hunting.
I was surprised Vic didn't lob.
He can get the boat.
Yeah, Vic said he would be coming in at the Piazza, but... He's a funny bloke, Vic. He's very hard to pin him down.
Yes. As Jeff points out, he's an interesting bloke, a mystery perhaps, as the article reveals a few of his thoughts, which we'll get to in a moment. I think Vic is doing for the shark population what Paul Ehrlich is attempting to do for the human population, which is an interesting cross comment. He wants us to keep up the work, and he says that the show it helps keep people sane in Queensland in this shark-crazy state of Queensland, which is a nice way of putting it. And he asked, obviously, Roy, whether you've studied any geography or geology before. He says he hears a few references, to pedalphus and pedicoles and isostasy and so on. Yeah. He says he picks up on this because he studies geology at the University of Queensland.
Isn't that tremendous? Well, of course, geology in Queensland are very much hand in hand at the moment. There's a lot of very exciting work happening in Queensland. I think Queensland University Geology Department have narrowed down the oldest bit of rock in the world, actually, that they found just in Canada, which is 3.8 billion years old. It's a very old stone. Very exciting news, because it's not often when you get rocks coming up onto the crust. They get broken down and reformed through different varying tectonic and meteorological forces, and it's very hard to track down just how old they are. You don't get them in a pristine condition, but to get that stuff coming from the below the crust and to be exposed there, tremendous. And Queensland University, they're the ones doing it.
Roy, Jeff sent me this article, as mentioned, clipped from the Courier Mail. Now, it's written by Vic. And I must say, for a shark hunter, the bloke can write.
Yes.
I want people to concentrate on this because it is well worth taking on board. Vic starts, I made my decision to hunt Michael Docherty's killer, knowing full well I would be target of unfounded and hysterical criticism. He then goes on to say, I have devoted my life to bringing out the truth, to see shark victims do not die in vain and are remembered. There are 350 species of sharks in our waters, and I consider only 4 of these man-eaters. My critics base their views either on their own experiences of playing with harmless sharks in tank or through brainwashing by others convinced of what beautiful and magnificent creatures sharks are. Yeah. It seems that human life is given no value in such arguments. It hurts me deeply to see the rubbish peddled about killer sharks being sick or injured, or having their personal space invaded by humans, or there being more people killed by bee stings or struck by lightning. Such theories, according to Vicky Hislop, conveniently overlook the hundreds of Australians who have gone missing and presumed drowned over the years, especially in places like Udinadatta. You don't have to be Einstein, according to Vic, to work out what has happened in the majority of cases. If a body is found with arms and legs missing, and as long as water is found in the lungs, the death is registered as being caused by drowning.
Or misadventure.
When body parts are found on beaches, the public is simply told a body has been found. The cover-up is out of control. What does Bazio know about Vic's ideas? Initially, I had decided not to chase the North Point killer. I live 2,000 kilometres away in Cairns, where I work 7 days a week hunting the buggers with my wife, Tracy. I knew I would have to leave her and our 2 young kiddies behind. I had a heart attack over 12 months ago, but the phone calls kept coming in from concerned families asking me to catch the shark. My wife's brother and a nephew both surf the area, this is Moreton Island, area where Michael was taken. I knew that if I made up my mind, it would be 100% dedicated effort, 24 hours a day, week in, week out, till I caught the bullet Roger. It was inevitable I would cop bad press and ranting of the minority groups who hate me with a passion. All night it bothered me. I did not sleep. This was an unusual attack. Another person went missing 2 weeks earlier off the same rocks and nobody was ever recovered. I know that sharks are generally wary of humans because of their morphic resonance problems, but once become part of their food chain, they will not hesitate the next time. By 10 a.m. the next day I was packing. I arranged for a boat from Harvey Bay and paid $360 for 12 big tuna as bait. You fish for different sharks in different ways. I spent hours studying the weather, the time of year, the position, the attack pattern, narrowing the killer down to a tiger or a big white. The witness who pulled Michael's remains from the shark's jaws said it was over 4.2 kilometres long and had a pointy nose. The description fits only white pointers, but it was too late in the year for a white to be in that area. The whites had started their trek south a month before. The main body was passing Melbourne and Sydney and had already gotten round to Albany in Western Australia. They followed the humpback whales north to eat the baby humpbacks through from June to early September and then head back to Victoria and South Australia for the baby seals. I was almost certain I was chasing a tiger. But because of conflicting reports, I decided to set different lines for a tiger and a white. You cannot afford to hit a shark like that and lose it. Finally, at daylight, we set out in a 5.5 metre Haynes Hunter, which is an aluminium tinny, really, and for the 50-kilometre trek to the fatal scene. For 5 nights, my friend Ken and I lived on bread, peanut toast and tins of pictures kindly sent up by Roy Slavin. The media through the helicopters and boats bombarded me with questions asking me what right I had to catch the buggers and whether I was out there doing it for commercial gain. On the 6th day, I was due to be back in Cairns for an appointment with my heart specialist. Remember, of course, Vicky, suffering with the dicky ticker, out there doing it for Michael. Not one bait had been touched for 5 nights. I felt that the shark, which was clearly lord of its domain and frightening away all other marine life, had been looking at the bait, but was very, very wary. It was very spooky when you're after a shark in the exact spot that a human has been killed. Long nights, lots of thoughts. Sometimes you feel so close to the victim, you think you can start a conversation with that person. My gut feeling was that I was only hope of bringing some small amount of peace to Michael's soul was to catch the bugger. Tormented, I flew back to Cairns, but I could not rest. I knew the shark was still there. My doctor's appointment was 9:30 the next day, but I left at the 6 a.m. flight back to Brisbane. I did not know what was driving me at this point. I just had to move. Just a terrific story, isn't it? So beautifully documented.
Yes, very.
Shall I keep going, or do you think
I don't know. I want to get to the end.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, I shouldn't leave you hanging on a hook.
Yes, yes, it's a very Kon-Tiki expedition, isn't it?
Yeah, Thor Hideout.
Yes.
Yes. What I like about it, though, is that Vic, I think, scripts a lot of his actions before they arrive. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, he knew he was shark hunting, so he booked up a couple of appointments with the doctor for the Dicky Ticker in case he missed out in the first week. I like the bit about that bit where he talks there about, late at night. He's so close to the victim.
Yes, well, Michael Sowell, of course. That's what, there's obviously a force operating here that is quasi-spiritual.
By 4 p.m. we were passing the north end of Moreton Island, and I'd bought 3 more tuna. I knew I need... Whoops, I'm sorry. In fact, I've lost the whole page. Come back, Vic. You do get spiritual, and sometimes...
Well, there's another spiritual force here, actually.
Indeed. What do they call it? A poltergeist. Moving things around the room. I knew I needed stingrays, but could not get any...
Psychokinetic energy, I think it is.
And had made an appeal on TV for help. No, I didn't. It goes on TV. Anybody got any stingrays out there?
What, he needed bait?
He needed bait.
He put out a bait appeal.
He put out a bait appeal for a stinger. A man...
Who had the stinger killed?
Well, hang on. A man, unnamed, might have been Peter Feynman. A man waved us into the beach holding up a 3-metre wide stinger. It was not until... Sorry, that's a 3-kilometre wide stinger. It was not until late that night that the lines were set once again. I put the stingray on the end of the line off the boat about 4:30 a.m. The boat was on alert. The battle was on. For 2 hours I fought. I was fighting a large tiger. Eventually the enormous head roared up beside the boat, level with my face. I yelled, "It's a white pointer!" "It's a Port Jackson!" "No, it's not. It's a Mako." "No, I'm wrong again." Gee, he knows his sharks, doesn't he? As the boat landed back in the water, bashing against the side of the boat, I grabbed another hook on 10 metres of 16mm rope. That's 16 miles of rope. Width, that is, not length. I drove the hook in so far into the shark's gill, my elbow was momentarily stuck in the shark, and I thought I was going over with the shark. Another powerful run to the end of the rope, and then we pulled the monster back and shot him. Ken first spotted the damage to the shark's dorsal fin, which we felt had been the cause of its ramming into Michael's surfboard. The shark didn't not at any time bite the board. This killer knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted human meat. He had knocked Michael off and was after him and eating him. The stingray made the difference. My job was done. All I had to do was live through the organised phone calls condemning me, media criticism, about 6 months of trying to make up the 4,000 the exercise cost me. Every flathead, whiting and brim, which are caught by the thousands daily, has the same right to life as a shark. Yet a handful of people become all self-righteous and judgmental over a creature whose sole purpose of existence is to kill the gentle creatures of the ocean. One could question why the 4 dangerous species of shark exist in such a beautiful environment. They alone change it to be a place of death. It has to be faced daily by the dolphins, the whales, the dugongs, the turtles, humans, seals, and of course your Tommy Ruffs. I consider myself one of the most genuine conservationists, along with Prince Philip of our time. But with my priorities in the right place, I've saved millions upon millions of human lives, thousands of dolphins and turtles and other marine life, while a lot of my critics just dream from behind their desks.
Yes, what a tremendous article that is, isn't it? It's really from the horse's mouth. I didn't realise that he's... That he was such a conservationist, and it's funny to think, nature every now and again goes right off the rails. Why nature threw up the white pointer in the first place, I'm buggered if I know, and I'm just grateful that, Vic's on the case. But that spiritual sense, HG, I mean, can you imagine? It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, trying to find the very white pointer that did the damage all those weeks ago. There must have been some greater force guiding Vic towards it to seek what we'd call sweet revenge.
Do you think Michael might have helped?
Well, that's the only thing I can think of, HG. The sea is full of very strange stories. Who was at the helm of the Mary Celeste? Who was it? And was it a shark victim?
Do you know what, Roy? I'd like to draw a long bow, if I could, going back to your Don Lane Tonight shows. Doris Stokes.
Yes.
Just a name to conjure with.
Yes.
Do you think she might have helped from the other side?
Well, obviously there was a force not dissimilar to Doris inside Vic, propelling him to seek justice. You know, a larger justice, not the sort of
Temporal justice.
very stupid, yes, temporal justice you get, say, at the High Court. I'm talking real justice here. I'm talking spiritual justice. And I bet Vic slept very, very, very comfortably that night.
And aren't they masters of your political intrigue? You not only your Hong Kongese,
yes,
but your Chinese generally. They played this game a lot longer than
very
Australia.
close to the chest.
Oh, unbelievably close to the chest.
Yeah.
And that Deng, isn't he a master?
Deng.
He's a goer, isn't he?
He is.
When he bobbed
is.
up
Yes.
at Acapulco, unannounced.
With a couple of dogs and a packet of fags. He looks tremendous with a bit of dead dog in one hand and a fag in the other. He's a tremendous bloke. Loves his sport.
Oh. Look, why I say that Sydney has fallen behind into second place vis-a-vis the Chinese bit.
You're ding.
And you ding.
Because Deng's determined to be there in the year 2000.
Oh, I know. I think he's got another decade left in him, Ding. I was going to say, Roy, I just wanted to preface...
He's fit as a fiddle downstairs, you know.
They call him Mr. Tool.
They do. They do. Yes.
What I was going to say was Sydney has been upstaged in a video presentation to the Association of National Olympic Committee in Acapulco last weekend by Beijing, as mentioned, which hired the great American director Buddy Greenspan to direct its videos. Sydney 2000 chief Roddy McGeoch said yesterday the video gave Beijing bonus points in the struggle to win the Olympic bid, but declared Sydney would not be overshadowed like that. Gee, you've got to think of everything, don't you, Roy, in this thing? Yeah. It's not only money late at night, but, you know, those little gifts of chocolates and sort of hats and sweatshirts that everybody share the Spirit 2000. Yes. Everybody's wearing in Acapulco.
That's right.
And, you know,
you go into your hotel room and there's the Ludi gussetless underpants just resting there with your name on them on the bottom of the bed, and you pull the pillow back and...
There's money,
yes.
chocolates.
You've got to think of everything. This is the funnel to put in your mouth so you can just pour the chocolates in while you're lying there looking at the video screen fixed in the ceiling so that you don't have to, you know, turn your eyes away. You can just lie there asleep and watch television. I mean, you've got to think of everything. But, you know, what worries me about this video business, HCI...
Well, firstly, can I ask...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. What has Buddy done for Beijing? You know, what has he turned Beijing into? What I had a look at, it made it seem very, very exciting place. Something out of the future.
Yes, it was just such a metropolis about it, wasn't it? There was something really unbelievably advanced about it. And just to see Deng totally nude with his back...
every frame.
In every frame, with his back to camera, bent over, wiggling his bot Ludi style... and in the background, of course, seeing tremendous futurist images of what they're going to do to Beijing if they can get it up and running, i.e. tear the whole thing down, just make it rubble and then start again. I think it's got tremendously. I found the video inspiring, and at the time I thought it was Sydney I was looking at, and I said to Johnny Fay, John, this is just a mind blower. And that's when he went ashen face for the first time and put both hands in the trousers.
This week in Roy Magazine, a Wimbledon special as we go tennis crazy with Princess Michael of Kent kicking it off with memories of the most interesting ball boy she's ever met. Read about the night the Princess stayed up all night with Yannick Noah, Keith Moon and John Gielgud. See the Princess's Polaroids of Virginia Wade in the bath with Lou Hode and of zany Cliff Richards in the fridge with madcap Sue Barker after the victory ball. And see what the Princess can do with a Hoggett shoulder four-quartered shot that kept Ted Tingling firing on all six for a decade longer than the doctors thought possible. All this and more in this month's Wimbledon special Roy Magazine, with Lady Di and the Supermax backstage with Spandau Ballet at the Hammersmith Odeon on the front cover.
You've the Krause room so many times before. You must have a lot of memories of the room here. Can you share any? Let's face it, it's the venue for kickboxing in the West.
Yes.
A lot of people come on the kickboxing nights. They have darts tourneys here and pool out the back.
Yes.
Oh, it's just tremendous.
Yes, it's an entertainment feast, isn't it? Day in, day out, night in, night out. I remember when, in the old days, dancing used to be here. And I remember coming one night and Lang was here.
The old days, yes.
They were the old days. And Lang had a very attractive, what he called a dancing apparatus. It was a series of blocks and tackles and all that sort of gear strung up around the ceiling that could make him sort of dance Pinocchio / puppet-like. It afforded no effort on the bloke's muscle infrastructure at all, but it looked fantastic. And by golly, you know, even when he was 81 and 2, he could cut the jib on the dance floor in a mechanised sense, better than anyone I've ever seen. And to see he and Rose sort of dirty dancing style was certainly, you know, I loved it, and I know it brought a lot of punters in. I know there are a lot of punters here today who'd be with me sharing a tear at the memory of those grand old days when Lang would just, you know, the ambulance would just arrive at the door with the back doors flung open, and Lang would ski in with a lot of equipment, nude, of course, and you know, with a lot of people, and I will say this, a lot of people, especially, you know, octogenarians nude, don't make very attractive viewing. Especially when they're being wheeled about via apparatus in synchrony with house music, acid house music. Lang was an exception. He was. Whenever Lang got up and danced, I noticed everyone had to just sit down because they were that excited. He was the sort of bloke, as the blood went asunder in his body, the blood in blokes in particular went south. And I will say that about him. He was a tremendous bloke in that regard. He was a floor clearer. He was a sort of bloke, you couldn't get your eyes off him, you couldn't get your eyes off bits of him. And when he had, you know, that special bit of block and tackle on the tackle, so that it would go in, you know, in the opposite movement to the rest of the body, I just thought it was fantastic. And, you know, looking at him in that way, I could see why so many young women were interested in him. And... young kiddies, wide-eyed kiddies, just with sunshine on their smiles, watching you go from go away, and then just to sit down with satisfaction, having washed your hands, plonk yourself down on the table and watch those kiddies hoe into a good, wholesome bit of freshly slaughtered beef. There's nothing like it.
And Roy, you pointed out to me, and I think this has turned my thinking around entirely, was that I'd seen the slaughtering process as the last part of the farming.
Yes, of course it is.
Chain.
It is farming.
But obviously, it's the first start of your food, you know,
it's
consumption
at the cusp,
change.
It's right at the cusp.
And I think that people, you know, obviously do see farming as a fairly backward occupation, you know,
which it's not.
heavy-handed.
It's unbelievable.
It's a science.
It's sophisticated.
Yeah. Whereas now, of course, you know, with your, you know, the way that you, and let's face it, you know, first touring the Lithgow Abattoir with you was an absolute mind-opener, not about how funny it can be, but how many skills there are on display. And also to see it, you know, as the integral first step. And let's face it, there wouldn't be any meat on anybody's table unless somebody took a first step and put the bullet in the brain of the beast. You know, of the food preparation chain. It's an absolute eye-opener. And congratulations to the people concerned up there at hang on, I've just lost the spot. It's Sunland Meats, Sunland Wholesale Meats for the open day, and you know, obviously encourage everybody to get along with it. And let's hope let's hope the abattoir is in full, you know, flight, so to speak.
Oh, look, I love it, HG, when so you get a young vealer, and I know that's tautologous. You know, obviously a vealer is young. But if you can have it on a leash and put a kiddie on them and just run it around with a kiddie on it, they do love it, and they form a relationship. And to see later on in the day, if you take a photograph of the kiddie on the vealer and take another Polaroid at the end of the day when the kiddie's rubbing its tummy, when it's so full it could bust. I think you give them the two photographs at the end of the day and they go home just fueled. I think so. Children have tremendous imaginations, actually, but when they are confronted with the actuality, often reality is much, much stranger than anything a child could imagine. And I think an abattoir is one of those areas where that is exactly the case. It's so much stranger than a kiddie could imagine. When you say to a kiddie when on the back of a vealer, how would you like to eat it? They're blown away.
Well, and Ed Devereux says he sometimes takes interested children to the top of Mount Stumpy Stevens when a strong southerly breeze is due and invites them to stand with him on the mountain with their mouths open, just tasting the wind. I love tasting the wind, adds Ed, and if you stand there with your eyes closed, you can taste where the wind has been. Come on, kids, just stand leaning slightly forward into the breeze, I say. And they say, thanks for that, Ed. And later I see them passing by on the bus when I'm walking down to the water with my rod, and they just point and smile.
My difficulty with the Lily Spray is that I can see that you've got to start off with, you know, a provocative opening gambit, or otherwise nobody's going to read a column called Tiger Tails. I mean, that's got failure written all over it for a start. And how long...
Who gave him that idea?
Well, I don't...
Kenny Casellas?
Well, I certainly hope so. But how long has Dennis Lilly been called Tiger? I thought it was Tiger Bill O'Reilly. Has Dennis picked up the baton that was hurled on the SCG turf when Bill O'Reilly fell off the twig all those weeks ago? Who says Dennis can be Tiger Dennis Lilly? I mean, it's got nonsense.
No one calls him Tiger. Why not Lang?
Lang Tales or Lang Talks. Now
Lang Hancock with Dennis Lilly. Now that's got a ring to it.
But once again...
I kicked Jarvin William Dad and made a goose of myself on international television.
Talks.
With Dennis Lilly.
That's right. Now,
I wore a really stupid headband for a lot of years, and people still snigger behind their backs when I walk by. With Dennis Lilly.
Yeah. I invented the aluminium bat, but Mike Briley wouldn't let me use it at the Wacker, and I hurled it at the boundary line. With Dennis Lilly.
Any of those would work. I'm an old, nearly dead cricketer. With Dennis Lilly. I haven't got any ideas, but I've got a column. As told to Kenny Casellas.
And you know who did all the telling? Kenny. Now, Roy, what concerns me about it is this the only issue? And I refer to Rod Hogg's column earlier. I mean, Rod Hogg talked about the, let's face it, the bouncer war,
yes.
The West Indians being bunnies. Already, that's a lot more than Dennis has talked about. All Dennis has talked about is Dean Jones and the hatred that they have for each other.
Yes.
Then Roddy Hogg goes on and talks about rule changes. Should there's not many people dragging, so maybe we could go back to the back foot rule with regard to no balls. Field placements. Hoggy's got half a column about that. Then he's on about over rates. Then Hoggy thinks the 8-ball over's worth another try. ... Length of run-up, electric carts. He's full of ideas, Rod Hogg, even though they're all hopeless. Unfortunately, Dennis Lilly had one idea. When it occurred to him, I don't know. He's probably been harbouring that idea for the best part of the football season. And yet we've got now 6 months of Dennison talking in the papers about similar issues. But surely to goodness, Roy, there's bigger topics than whether Dean Jones should be in the 11 or not.
Oh, look, I agree. I mean, there's cricket itself that should be talked about. When did it die? And does it coincide with or did it coincide with the emergence of Dennis Lilly as a cricket force? That's when cricket died. When an old bloke could, you saw Balding Pate, I won't hold that against him. Big Mo, I will hold that against him. Yes. When an old bloke with a Mo could trundle down and get wickets at the drop of a hat, you've got to say that's when cricket died. Don't blame Dean Jones. I killed cricket.
With Dennis Lilly. And I would have to say this, Roy, when you talk about his record, didn't Rodney Marsh make him look good? He took all those catches behind the stumps and did most of the bowling, most of the thinking was Rod. And why hasn't Rodney Marsh got a column bagging Dennis Lilly? That'd work.
Yes. I'm sure they've had that idea. I think they do have a bit of a problem with Rod. I think he gave up all his good ideas. When you've just stood behind the blokes, when you've just, spent the best part of your life looking at a bloke's bot between stumps. And every now and again a red cherry comes your way. You learn pretty early on in life that thinking's a real liability.
Prince Heath Lewis has an eye like a stuffed mullet, but he knows his art. He knows his Australian art. This season at the Lewis Galleries, see a tribute to Australian watercolourists, including The Shot Mare by A.J. Bugner, New Balls by Kay Rosewell, The Big Spit by S.D.C. Boone, and Fallen Fowl by H.R.H. Prince Charles. Other works featured in this magnificent retrospective are by Perce Jones, B.D. Elias, P. Bizasto, R. Lydner, C.C. Capper, Lord Tunks and R. Boyle. The Lewis Galleries, giving Australia the time to look. Now open on the Gold Coast. Roy Slaven's new novel, Phenomenal Footspeed, is a picaresque piece which explores the rites of passage from the moment the novel's hero Thomas Muster serves the ball to the point of impact of his first volley at the net. During this telling period, Thomas examines the savage relationship with his violent Uncle Johann, who forced him to play tennis against his wishes. Thomas relives the horrendous car accident in Miami which threatened to cut short his brilliant career, and in the 427 pages resolves his complex yet unhealthy relationship with Princess Caroline of Monaco and Peter Graf, Smith, who he thought he saw on the job in the backseat of the car that struck him all those months ago. Phenomenal Foot Speed is a novel which purges hate and fills the void with a post-Beckett optimism. Available at a newsagent or a departure lounge near you.
Yes, Roy, certainly the psychological war has worked for the West Indies at the Gabba. We're lucky enough there to be there on, Wednesday, and the Australian were winding up a training session just before noon when the Windies arrived early to start their session in the hope of beating the afternoon thunderstorms. Yeah. As the Windies completed their warm-up lap and headed en masse behind the Australians who were completing fielding training, the tourists started a slow, rhythmical hand clap, a battle cry of the Australian players, groundsmen and onlookers, which, should I say, turned the heads of the Australian players, groundsmen and onlookers. Bring 'em on seemed to be the theme, according to Crash Craddock, at least one person we spoke to up there. And the Windies players stared coldly ahead as attention was drawn to them. They stopped clapping as soon as they passed the Australians. It's been very intense, and it's worked for the West Indies, hasn't it? I could imagine them being about 5 for 10 if they hadn't pulled out that, psychological battle there. And, of course, as I mentioned in my opening comments, the hijinks off the paddock are just amazing at the moment. It's unbelievable what's going on behind the scenes in this first test at the Gabba.
It's very true. Actually, you can't underplay, I don't think, that psychological edge that you can get. They say I was reading some Scottish war diaries just the other night. One thing led to another, and they say that to be sitting in a valley at just 2 or 3 hours before dawn, and to hear the Scottish pipes and the drums start beating, knowing that its portents were that there were a lot of big blokes who wanted to go in very, very hard in brutal and cold and efficient fashion. So that slow, rhythmic beating told you of what was to come and really buggered you over in a pretty messy sort of way, so the diaries led on. And I think the West Indies have picked up on this. I think there's nothing quite as disturbing if you're there, just near your kit, waiting to have a bowl or putting your pads on to have a bit of a bat, and to see the West Indies just loom behind you and start that slow clapping, that mellifluous, dreadful knocking of bone and flesh. I think it does conjure up every young, especially in the case of the young West Australian kiddie. It would summon up all the nightmares I think that a batsman could have, and all the nightmares a bowler could have as well, knowing he was going to get thumped. So I thought it was a terrific thing for Richie Richardson to organise, and don't get me wrong here, I think Richie's a terrific bloke, but I think he would have organised that. I think that was a conscious thing that would have been cooked up between himself and that old devil Rowan Canhigh.
Yeah, and of course when Rowan was in the stands or behind the stands on the whale,
that's right.
Style.
Yes.
That really did send the heebie-jeebies through AB, and it made Merv. Yeah.
Oh, scary. No one would have slept. No one would have slept after that.
That's right. I don't think anybody in the Australian team slept since.
No. I think that's right.
And I could see, if without that, I could have seen AB break this 524 runs that he needs to become the greatest, run scorer at beating Sonny Gavaskar's Sunil Gavaskar's record at the moment. I could see him doing that yesterday, and then I could see Australia at the moment being about 6 for about 400 at this particular juncture, instead of obviously being bundled out this morning.
Well, silly shots got him out. Silly scared shots. I mean, people call them silly shots.
No, it's the most.
Ian Chappell calls them a silly shot. And obviously the pitch at the Gabba is a belter. It's what I describe as a belter.
Chock-a-block full of runs.
Chock-a-block full of runs, obviously. And I think what got them out, Mark Waugh with that very silly stroke back to Hooper, and, a number of other dismissals. I put down...
AB?
Yeah, AB. Yeah. I put down to the boom, 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 the beating. Yeah.
And Rowan out the back of the grandstand.
Yeah, Rowan.
Yeah. Well, they only had to start up. He obviously, 4 or 5 times yesterday, everybody heard there was a deathly silence at the Gabba. Yes. The only thing you could hear was... Ooh.
Well, Rowan Canhigh positions himself just outside the Australian dressing room, in the ground there, and he's not watching the cricket. He's just staring into the Australian dressing room through the glass, and they hate that.
Little Island, just north of Brisbane, is now Nude Island. All your holiday dreams can come true on Nude. Check out your mate skier while playing volleyball. Go pig stabbing with Noel and Les Cleal. Take the big drop bungy rope style with Roddy Grinter. And at night, as the sun sets over Nude Bay, it's Jackie Love as you've never seen her before. Under the stars on the sensual sands of Nude Beach.
You've never felt so free.
leave them in the Gold Pass Transit Lounge at the helipad on the way in. Nude Island, where nude means fun.
IB Finch, Peter Senior, Colin Montgomery have all queried the change by the AGU, and we know Craig Parry, Woozers and Nick Faldo have mentioned it, in private comments without going public. Now, when we spoke, obviously, to Brucey Devlin, he said simply, they've what? Incredulously, when told of the change over this phone, that's Bruce Devlin, obviously not the school teacher in Victoria, but the Gulf of Texas. In Melbourne.
Well, he said they've what as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Uncanny.
Yeah.
I phoned him in Melbourne.
Yeah, to say, Bruce,
I said,
how are you?
Bruce, Roy, how you doing? All's well, anything going on, I said, yes. The 14th at the Lakes. He said, the par 5. I said, it's a 4. He said, they've what? They've what?
Yeah. Well, Brucey Devlin, the one in Texas.
You could just hear sort of...
There's the phone drop. Yeah, and then a bigger clunk.
Yeah, that's right. Coming.
Yeah, right. Emergency. And a brief wail in the background. Woo! Now...
Girls, you've spent the night with Arco and been lost for words. Well, stand back with the glad rags on again, because Roy and HG have split the atom by signing the biggest name in Australian sport to be available every Thursday night between now and Christmas for you and you alone. Imagine this, a candlelit bedroom. You're lying back, relaxed, when out of the shower, with a boxing kangaroo towel loosely draped over the loins, comes cricket's Mr. Success, Bobby Simpson. Yes, it's hard to believe, but the man they simply call Simo could be calling on you. For a very modest fee, you can be totally immodest for a whole night with Bob. Ring Roy now on the Simo line to get your man green and gold with envy.
We were lucky enough to get catch up with Liz Taylor this week, and unfortunately we had words.
Well, that's...
I've gone off Liz.
Ever since she's been with Larry, I've gone off.
Well, I've struggled.
I've gone off Larry ever since she's been with Liz.
Yeah, well, I was never on the Larry case much in the first place, but be that as it may, Liz Taylor has sacked the cook who made the meals that fed the star that made her fat. After only a few months of Ladoris Jackson's Southern-style fresh fry cooking, Liz has piled on 11 ton, and she decided she'd be better off without her. However, Ladoris did get a glowing reference. Now, this irks me somewhat. Liz Taylor wasn't tied in a chair and a funnel stuck down her throat, and Ladoris did the shoveling.
Well, I don't know. That might be Ladoris style. It's what's for dinner tonight, Ladoris? It's chicken with funnel.
The reverse of Nouvelle cuisine. More than you can possibly eat.
More than you can possibly eat, yes.
As a reverse to a meal that leaves you hungry before you even... The other thing is, why didn't she fire the food?
Or so have a word... Look,
Drop the... just Ladoris.
I know Ladoris. Ladoris is a... Well, she's a generous cook, I will say.
If you want 2 wagon wheels, she'll give you 6.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, you ask for a nice, piece of steak, you end up with...
Half a cow.
Well, a whole cow on your plate. A whole cow, cooked to perfection. I mean, melts in your mouth, every bit of it.
Falls off the bone.
Falls off the bone. I mean, you can have... And it's terrific having the whole thing there, because if you want a bit of leg, you can have that, or you want a bit of shoulder, you can, just poke the fork in there and wiggle about and come out with something that's tender and juicy and beautiful. But I found Ladora very amenable. Ladoris, you've only got to say to her, not too much, thanks, Ladoris. And she'll swing the other way, you'll just end up with a fish finger. And a half a fish finger, garnished with a
bit of parsley.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's dinner.
I think Liz has acted too hastily. She's gone from the fat to the fire, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah.
And,
And it's not as if, when, the whole, bullock was served to her on a number of occasions when she did say she was on the tooth. You can't blame Ladoris for Liz eating it all.
Well, she changed the knife and fork down so she can't get them up to the mouth. And Liz, obviously gets the oxycillin, cuts it through,
exactly,
and then reaches down like that, eats it straight off the plate.
I've seen Liz in that frame of mind where, instead of a knife and fork, she just has 2 chainsaws.
Yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wickies and quicks, first drops and rabbits, members of the Golden Egg Club and hat trickers, bunnies for the bouncer, and spin specialists alike. And welcome to another 4 hours in the creams, down the business end of the net, coping with the short stuff, while not letting go of the brown on this sporting life. It's Englebert Humperdinck, the self-styled king of romance, jetted into Sydney this week, and Roy and I were there to meet him. The romantic, the 60s sex symbol,
hang on a minute, Englebert Humperdinck wouldn't like to be described as that. He's a 90s sex symbol, as nearly as I can tell. Has just released his slack opening perfume, just simply called Release Me, after his biggest song. He's here for the last leg of his 25th anniversary world tour.
Yes.
And despite the 23-hour, flight from London, the ponytail singer looks far younger than his 99 years. No knife has been on my face, unlike other singers, Englebert Humperdinck.
Like Rod Stewart.
Englebert said he's confident he still possesses the charm which first sent women swooning to his crooning almost 90 years ago. I hope I still have sex appeal. When I don't, it's time to give up. He says his show is contemporary with a liberal dose of nostalgia. i.e. singing things like Santa Won't Make It Into Darwin this year, and Six White Boomers, and Timey Kangaroo Down Sport, and things like that up the nostalgia end. And now, well, he does a lot of Poison songs. I think my music is beginning to have much broader appeal, according to the Hump. And of the perfume launched in America last week, he said it's beautiful scent. It took me years to develop, but it was obviously a hit because the first batch sold out within days of release. Roy, you've had a sniff. What did you make of the big bloke's smell?
Oh, look, I think it smells terrific. It's one of those what I described as a chameleon sort of sense. As you know, as you well know, HG, you know our dealings with ambergris go back a long way. We've killed many a while just to get a terrific sniff up. And it's one of those sniffs that really interacts with your body.
Yes.
So it's pointless just opening up the bottle and putting your nose over it. It won't work. It just smells like, say, your blue Stratos gear. But once you've whacked it on your body parts, then it does take on a totally different hue. Not only that, what I found interesting about it is, if, say, you put it under your arms, it smells, say, like your mum roll-on. If you put it on your wrists, it smells a little bit like
Sylvana.
Yes. If you put it on if you put it down in those nether regions, if you put it down there, that's when it comes into its own. That's when it smells like heaven. It just is all electric. You can't sit down. Well, you've got to sit down, but you can't because you're too fired up by what the gear down there is telling you that you're capable of doing. So it's a very, very potent and dangerous force. And if anyone gets a chance, that's the first thing I'd do is just undo the belt and undo the bottle and put the two together. Just pour it down. You know those old 471180 cologne ads? That's the sort of way you got to put it on with abandon downstairs.
But allowing release the slack opening, Release Me alone for a moment. When I think Englebert,
I
get one.
Of course.
I asked for a chair. Being hot to trot, and who isn't at this time of year when the sap is on the rise and the loin's on fire every minute of the day? Easily the best, brightest and biggest week since Dr. John the Night Tripper finally became a politician, and I now believe that the good doctor would be prepared to get old Jethro out of the Fremantle crop farm and ride him nude across the Nullarbor, dangling a Mars bar in front of the old bugger to elicit a long run, whistling Simonauts I Like It Both Ways, stopping at every watering hole between Perth and Sydney along the way with the back door wide open if he thought there was a boat in it. Congratulations, John, and welcome at last, son, to the main game. And, John, I am liking you more and more already because I know where you're coming from now. You want the keys to the lodge. I see you now as a bloke who's prepared to get down in the muck and root around for every vote you see glinting in any gutter you happen to pass. That, my friend, is a politician. Johnny, after this road to Damascus conversion, the pundits are already comparing you, and I think Alan Ramsey did this in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning, and I know Michelle Grattan has got a beautiful think piece in The Age tomorrow comparing you with the great Russell Hinds. And I can think of no more fitting comparison. After all, Dr. John Russ was the sort of man who got into politics and asked, not what can I do for my country, what can I do for my state, what can I do for my electorate, what can I do for my supporters, but Russ simply asked at the top of his voice when he burst in through the big doors of the Parliament House in Brisbane, he said, now that I'm here, what can I do for myself? And that, Johnny, is the Australian way. Congratulations, John Hewson. I have my head off to think, and I think to myself here on The Sporting Life today, that if you keep changing fast enough, you can win, because the government, repeat, the government cannot hit a moving target travelling at speed, or certainly the speeds you are now approaching. John, I do know you have your hands full, but if I could take a moment of your busy time, and I must confess I realise that every loon and loop will be on the bleach screaming at you from the back of the bus, what about me? That is between now and 12 o'clock, or high noon as we call it, Press Club Canberra away next Friday. But can I just whisper one word in your shell like ear, John, and that word is luge? think about it, John. Luge, and next Friday. And when you get up to the lectern, do the right thing by us losers, please, son. You know, I know we're looking to you as a man who can deliver in our hour of need. Tennis!